Kael'ron had never lost a duel. Not once. Not ever. Not in 247 fights. Some duels had been quick, over in seconds. A single perfect strike. His opponent bleeding before they even understood what happened. Other duels had been brutal. Long, grinding tests of endurance and skill. Those were the ones Kael'ron enjoyed most. The ones that let him show his mastery, his superiority. But all 247 duels had ended the same way, with Kael'ron standing victorious, with his opponent either bleeding or surrendering, with the crowd chanting his name. He was the greatest duelist in the Valerian Empire, perhaps the greatest duelist who had ever lived. His name was legend. Children knew his victories. Warriors studied his techniques. The entire empire recognized him on sight. The Valorians were a warrior culture, had been for thousands of years. Honor and combat were not just important. They were everything, the foundation of their society, the measure of worth. Disputes were settled by duel. A merchant cheated you? Challenge him. A neighbor insulted you? Duel. Someone claimed your land? Meet them with blades. Promotions in the military came through combat. Political positions were won at sword point. Even marriage proposals could involve dueling. Violence was not chaos among the Valorians. It was order, structure, the most civilized way to resolve disagreement. And Kael'ron stood at the apex of that system. He was physically perfect by Valerian standards. 7 feet tall, 4 arms, each arm corded with muscle. His body was built for combat, for speed and power and endurance. His species had evolved as predators, hunters, warriors. Every aspect of their biology was designed for fighting. Kael'ron had trained since he was old enough to hold a blade, 5 years old. Most species would call that child abuse. Valorians called it education. He had spent decades mastering every traditional form, every classical technique, every historical style. He knew 17 different sword schools, could fight with any weapon, against any opponent. Combat was art to him, beauty made physical, poetry written in blood and steel. When Kael'ron fought, it was not violence. It was performance, grace, the perfection of movement and timing and skill. Other species were beneath him. That was not arrogance. Just fact. He had fought aliens before, dozens of species, all slower than Valorians, all weaker, all clumsy and untrained. Some had interesting techniques, but none were worthy opponents. None could match a true Valerian warrior. Then the humans arrived. They came in diplomatic ships, trade delegation, official mission from the Human Alliance. Humans were new to this sector of space. Their ships were crude but functional. Their technology adequate but unimpressive. Their species weak-looking and small. Kael'ron saw them in the capital, walking through markets, attending official functions. They were tiny, barely over 6 feet tall, only 2 arms, soft bodies with no natural weapons, no claws, no armor plating, just fragile skin over fragile bones. They smiled too much, laughed too loud, talked endlessly about cooperation and mutual benefit, and building bridges between cultures. Everything was negotiation. Everything was compromise. They seemed incapable of just stating what they wanted and taking it. Soft, that was the word that came to Kael'ron's mind. Humans were a soft species, built for talking instead of fighting, for trading instead of conquering. They probably had never held a blade in their lives. Kael'ron was in the central market when the incident happened. He was not shopping, just walking, observing, letting the crowd see him, letting them remember who stood at the top of Valerian society. A human merchant was there, setting up a stall, selling human goods, strange items, electronics, fabrics, things Kael'ron did not recognize. The merchant was negotiating with a Valerian trader, trying to secure a good location, a prime spot. The negotiation was not going well. The Valerian trader was aggressive, demanding. The human was trying to be diplomatic, trying to find middle ground, trying to make everyone happy. It annoyed the Valerian. This weak alien trying to negotiate as equals. The trader stepped forward, shoved the human, hard, 2 hands against the human's chest. The human stumbled backward, tried to catch himself, failed, fell, his goods scattered across the ground, broke. The crowd laughed. Kael'ron laughed. It was funny, this tiny alien thinking he could stand up to a Valerian. Then another human stepped forward. He had been nearby. Security officer based on his uniform. The patch said Miller, J in human script. He was average for a human, maybe 6 feet, brown hair going gray, weathered face, unremarkable. He helped the merchant up, made sure the man was okay, then turned to face the Valerian trader. His body language changed, went from helpful to dangerous. Subtle shift. Most Valorians would not have noticed. Kael'ron noticed. "Apologize," Jake Miller said. His voice was calm, quiet, but hard underneath. The Valerian trader laughed. Actually laughed. This human demanding an apology. "Make me, little human." "I challenge you to a duel," Jake said. Still calm, still quiet, like he was ordering food instead of proposing combat. The market went silent, completely silent. Hundreds of Valorians all stopping at once, staring. Humans did not duel. Everyone knew that. Humans negotiated, talked, compromised. They were peaceful, diplomatic, weak. They did not challenge Valorians to combat. That was suicide. The trader's laugh died. He looked uncertain. This human was serious. Actually serious. "You want a duel? A human?" "Yes." "I accept," the trader said, grinning again. This would be entertaining. The human would surrender immediately, or die quickly. Kael'ron stepped forward. He moved through the crowd. People parted automatically, making way. They knew who he was, what he represented. "No," Kael'ron said. His voice carried, silenced the murmuring crowd. "I accept the challenge." Everyone turned, stared. The greatest duelist in the Empire, stepping forward. Accepting a challenge meant for a merchant. This was unprecedented. Jake looked at him, studied him, took in the 7 feet of muscle, the 4 arms, the casual confidence of someone who had never lost. His expression did not change, did not show fear, just assessment. "You don't have to do this," Jake said. My challenge was to him. "You challenge a Valerian to a duel," Kael'ron replied, "in public, before witnesses. That challenge can be accepted by any Valerian who chooses. I choose. You get a Valerian warrior, the best Valerian warrior. I will make this quick, human, out of mercy. You do not deserve to suffer." The crowd murmured, excited. This would be a spectacle. The undefeated champion against a human. It would not be a fight. It would be an execution. Entertainment. Jake looked at him for a long moment. Really looked, taking his measure, then nodded slowly. "Tomorrow, dawn, traditional rules. I'll be there." "See you then, human," Kael'ron said. He smiled, anticipating. This would be amusing, a way to demonstrate Valerian superiority. A lesson for these soft aliens. He had no idea he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The arena filled before dawn. Thousands of Valorians packing the stone seats, climbing the walls to get better views. The word had spread fast. The undefeated champion was fighting a human. Kael'ron versus an alien who barely came up to his chest. They were not here for the combat. Everyone knew how this would end. The human would be defeated in seconds, maybe killed if he was unlucky. This was about spectacle, about watching Kael'ron demonstrate Valerian superiority, about putting these new soft aliens in their place. Betting was heavy, not on who would win, on how long the human would last. Most bets were under 10 seconds. A few optimists said 30. No one thought it would go longer. The sun broke over the arena walls as Kael'ron entered. The crowd roared, chanted his name. 247 victories. 247. He raised all 4 arms in acknowledgement, soaked in the adoration. This was his element, his stage. He wore traditional dueling armor, light leather and metal plates that protected vital areas without restricting movement. It was ceremonial as much as functional, beautiful, etched with his victory count, with symbols of honor and skill. The armor of a champion. He carried 2 swords, curved blades, perfectly balanced, made specifically for his fighting style. He had trained with these weapons for decades. They were extensions of his body. His were made physical. Jake Miller entered the silence. No cheering, no chanting, just quiet, the crowd watching, judging. This human who had dared challenge a Valerian, who had not backed down even when faced with Kael'Ron himself. He wore basic combat gear, simple pants and shirt, light armor over his chest. Nothing ceremonial, nothing beautiful, just functional. Protection where it mattered most. He carried one straight blade, human design, simpler than Valerian weapons. No curve, no decoration, just steel and an edge. The contrast was stark. The champion in gleaming armor with perfect weapons. The human in plain gear with a simple blade. David and Goliath. Except everyone knew how this story ended differently. The Arbiter stepped forward. Old Valerian. Respected. He had overseen duels for 50 years. Had probably never seen something this one-sided. Traditional Valerian duel, the Arbiter announced. His voice carried across the silent arena. Bladed weapons only. First blood or surrender ends a match. Combatants ready? Kael'Ron nodded. Confident. Relaxed. This would not take long. Jake nodded. Calm. Centered. His grip on his blade was loose. Comfortable, like he had held weapons before. Begin! Kael'Ron moved immediately. Explosive speed. Closing the distance in a heartbeat. He struck high with his right hand. Fast downward cut. Simultaneously swept low with his left. Classic opening. High-low combination. Forced opponents to choose which to block. Either choice left them vulnerable. Jake blocked high. Barely. His blade met Kael'Ron's with a clang. But the low strike forced him back. Off balance. Retreating. Exactly as expected. Kael'Ron pressed forward. This would be over in moments. He used all four arms now, creating a whirlwind of steel. Each strike precise. Each movement textbook perfect. Centuries of technique, refined into pure lethal grace. High, low, middle, sweeping. Attacks from every angle. Every direction. Overwhelming. Jake defended. Desperately. His single blade trying to track for. Trying to block attacks coming from positions he could not cover. He was retreating. Backing toward the arena wall. Running out of space. Running out of time. The crowd was already cheering. Already celebrating. The inevitable victory. Some were counting. Wondering if the human would make it to 10 seconds. Kael'Ron was just toying with him now. Could end this any moment. Was drawing it out for crowd. Then Jake did something strange. Something no Valerian would ever do in a duel. He grabbed a handful of sand from the arena floor. Threw it. Right at Kael'Ron's face. Kael'Ron dodged easily. Twisted aside. The sand missed. Scattered harmlessly. But the crowd gasped. Shocked. Outraged. That was not dueling. That was cheating. Dishonorable. Disgusting. Cheap trick human. Kael'Ron said. Disappointed. He had expected more. Expected at least an attempt at honorable combat. Effective trick, Jay corrected. He was moving differently now. Not just retreating. Circling. Moving laterally. Using the arena's stone pillars. The uneven ground with the sand was deeper, creating obstacles between them. Kael'Ron pursued, more annoyed than threatened. The human was running, hiding behind obstacles, refusing to face him directly. Where was the honor in that? Where was the courage? This was pathetic. Stand and fight, Kael'Ron demanded. I am fighting, Jake said. He kept circling, kept moving, making Kael'Ron chase him. Kael'Ron was faster, stronger. He closed the distance, cornered the human against a pillar, struck. Perfect triple combination. No room to dodge, no space to run. The human would have to block or surrender. Jake suddenly reversed direction, came at Kael'Ron instead of away. Low, fast, not perfect form, not classical technique. Just sudden explosive movement at an unexpected angle. Kael'Ron blocked. Had to adjust his stance. Had to think. Had to actually respond instead of just executing practice forms. The human was not fighting like Valorians fought. Was not following the patterns. The traditional responses. The expected behaviors. Where is your honor? Kael'ron demanded. This was not dueling. This was brawling. This was street fighting. This was beneath a warrior. Honor doesn't win fights, Jake said. His voice was steady, not even breathing hard yet. Winning wins fights. He struck. Quick, not powerful, not elegant, just fast and targeted. Kael'ron blocked easily, but Jake's blade scraped along his shoulder guard. The edge caught, pulled, tore the leather strap. The guard shifted, exposed skin underneath, drew a thin line of blood, first blood. To the human, the crowd went absolutely silent, dead silent. Thousands of Elorians all stopping at once, staring, not believing what they had just seen. The undefeated champion, Kael'ron, had been cut, had bled, in the opening exchange, against a human. Kael'ron stared at the blood on his shoulder, at this tiny scratch, at proof that the impossible had just happened. His brain refused to process it. 247 victories, never bleeding first, never losing the opening. Lucky, Kael'ron said, voice hard, dismissive. Had to be luck. Accident. Could not be skill. Sure, Jake said. He had stepped back, reset his stance, ready to continue. Let's call it luck. But his eyes said different. His slight smile said different. This was not luck. This was plan. This was human combat philosophy meeting Valerian tradition. And the tradition had just bled. Kael'ron stopped playing, stopped showing off the crowd, stopped treating this like entertainment. That first blood had been an accident, a fluke, lucky hit, but it had happened, and it would not happen again. He got serious, truly serious. Unleash his full skill. 200 years of training, 200 years of perfecting his craft. Every technique learned, every form mastered, every counter practiced 10,000 times until it became instinct. He moved like water, like lightning, all four arms working in perfect harmony. High, low, thrust, sweep, attacks flowing into each other. No gaps, no openings, no mercy. This was Kael'ron at his best, the fighter who had never lost, the champion. Jake was outmatched. Clearly, obviously, anyone watching could see it. Kael'ron was faster, by a significant margin, stronger, more skilled, better trained, better equipped. Every exchange proved it. Every clash of blades demonstrated the gap between them. Jake's blocks came late. His parries were sloppy. His footwork was wrong. He was not trained in classical combat, did not know the forms, did not understand proper technique. He was an amateur fighting a master. But Jake would not quit, would not surrender, would not accept the inevitable. He took hits. Kael'ron's blades found him, cut him, drew blood, a slash across his left arm, another on his thigh, a shallow cut across his cheek. Blood ran down his face, dripped on the sand. Jake was losing, dying by inches, but he kept fighting, kept moving, kept adapting, kept surviving. Valorians fought with grace, with form, with beauty. Each movement was art. Each strike was poetry. Combat was expression, performance, the highest form of their culture made physical. Jake fought like a cornered animal, dirty, desperate, ugly, effective. He used every trick, every advantage, every cheap shot, kicked sand, threw rocks, used the pillars, used the sun in Kael'ron's eyes, fought without honor, without rules, without shame. And he talked, constant talking, even bleeding, even losing. His voice never stopped. Getting tired yet? Jake asked, breathing hard but still steady. You're breathing heavy. That's not good for someone undefeated. Usually over by now, right? Silence. Kael'ron struck. Perfect overhead blow. 4 arms, 4 blades, converging from different angles. Textbook execution. Beautiful. Deadly. Jake dodged. Wrong. Not the proper counter. Not the classical response. Just threw himself sideways. Rolled. Came up covered in sand and blood, but alive. Survived by being unpredictable, by not doing what training said to do. You've never fought someone with nothing to lose, have you? Jake asked. He was circling again, limping now, but still moving. Someone who doesn't care about form, about looking good, about impressing the crowd. Someone who just wants to win, just wants to survive. Kael'ron pressed harder, attacked faster, used techniques that should end this, should finish the human. Perfect combinations, flawless execution, everything by the book. But Jake was learning, actually learning mid-fight. Every technique Kael'ron used, Jake saw once, barely survived, then adjusted, not perfectly, not with skill, just with raw survival instinct, with adaptation, with the human ability to change and evolve under pressure. The duel stretched on. 10 minutes, 20, 30. Kael'ron had never fought this long. His duels ended in seconds, maybe minutes if his opponent was skilled. Never half an hour, never this prolonged, never this exhausting. He was getting tired, actually tired. His muscles burned. His breathing was labored, heavy. His perfect form was starting to slip. Tiny mistakes, small inefficiencies. His strikes were a fraction slower. His blocks a hair late. 200 years of training sustained him, kept him fighting at a level Jake could not match. But fatigue was creeping in. The undefeated champion was being pushed, actually challenged, for the first time in his life. Jake was worse off, obviously. He was bleeding from a dozen cuts, limping from a leg wound. One eye was swelling shut. Blood covered his face and arms. He looked like he should surrender, should collapse, should give up. But he did not. Just kept moving, kept fighting, kept refusing to quit. Just surrender, Kael'ron said, frustration bleeding into his voice. You have lost. You are bleeding, injured, outmatched. Accept defeat with honor. Have I lost? Jake gestured at Kael'ron with his sword, at the champion who was visibly exhausted, who had never been pushed this far, who had never fought for 30 minutes straight. You're breathing like a broken pump. Your strikes are getting sloppy. Your form is degrading. I'm still standing, still fighting. So who's really losing here? Kael'ron roared, pure rage, pure frustration. This human, this tiny inferior alien, was mocking him, was suggesting Kael'ron might lose. Impossible, unthinkable, unacceptable. He charged, put everything into one final attack. Perfect strike, for blades converging from 4 angles. Impossible to defend, impossible to block, impossible to survive. This would end it, would silence this human forever. Jake did something impossible, something insane, something no trained fighter would ever do. He dropped his sword, just let it fall, dove forward instead of back, inside Kael'ron's guard, too close for blades to work, where swords became useless, where technique meant nothing. Jake grabbed Kael'ron's injured shoulder, the one he had cut first, gripped hard, yanked, used Kael'ron's own momentum against him, used his charge, his forward motion, his overwhelming force. They went down together, all 7 feet and 4 arms of Kael'ron crashing to the sand, Jake riding him down, landing on top. Before Kael'ron could react, before he could use his superior strength, Jake's elbow found his throat, pressed, hard. Surrender, Jake said, blood dripping from his face onto Kael'ron's, or I crush your windpipe. Your choice. Kael'ron could not breathe, could not move. Jake's weight was positioned perfectly, pinning 3 of his 4 arms. The 4th could not get leverage, could not push him off. His swords were scattered in the sand, useless at this range. This was not dueling. This was not classical combat. This was street fighting. This was brawling. This was everything Kael'ron had been taught to despise. And it was working. He tried to speak, could not breathe, could not get air past the elbow, crushing his windpipe. Black spots appeared in his vision, his body screaming for oxygen, for air, for life. I surrender, Kael'ron gasped, barely audible, barely possible, but clear enough. Jake immediately released the pressure, stood up, stepped back, gave Kael'ron space to breathe, to live. The arena was silent, absolutely silent. Thousands of Elorians, not one making a sound, not one moving, just staring, processing what they had just witnessed, the impossible, the unthinkable. Jake stood there, bleeding, limping, battered, but standing, Victorious, he offered his hand, held it out to Kael'ron, and offered to help him up. Kael'ron stared at that hand, at the human who had just beaten him, who had ended 247 victories, who had done what no Valerian ever had, defeated the undefeated champion, the human who had shown him that sometimes all the skill in the world was not enough, that sometimes survival mattered more than art, that sometimes winning ugly beat losing beautifully. The undefeated champion, defeated by a human who fought dirty, who broke every rule, who refused to quit. Kael'ron's world had just shattered, and he had no idea how to process it. Kael'ron sat alone in his quarters. The room was dark. He had not turned on the lights, did not want to see his reflection, did not want to see the warrior who had lost, who had failed, who had broken an undefeated streak that had defined his entire life. He had expected exile, expected the Council of Warriors to strip him of his titles, his honors, his position. 247 victories meant nothing now. History would only remember the loss, the defeat, the champion beaten by a human, by an alien, by someone who fought without honor. His legacy was destroyed. Everything he had built, everything he had achieved, gone, erased by one impossible duel. Jake Miller entered without knocking, just walked in like he owned the place. Humans did not understand proper protocols, did not understand that you announce yourself, asked permission, showed respect. They just did whatever they wanted. You should be celebrating, Kael'ron said. His voice was bitter. Hello, you beat the undefeated champion. You humiliated me in front of thousands, made me look weak, made Valorians look weak. This is what you wanted. You're the best fighter I've ever faced, Jake said simply. He stood in the doorway, bandaged, his cuts treated, but still bruised, still battered from the duel. Kael'ron laughed. Harsh, broken. I lost. Best fighters do not lose. Champions do not surrender. I am nothing now. That's bullshit, Jake said. He walked further into the room. Uninvited. You fought with more skill in one hand than most species have in their entire body. You're incredibly good. Your technique is flawless. Your speed is insane. Your control is perfect. And yet I lost to you. You just were not prepared for me, Jake said. He sat down on the bench across from Kael'ron. Did not ask. Just sat. That is not weakness. That is not failure. That is just circumstance. You fight without honor, Kael'ron said, the accusation that had been burning in him since the duel. Without form, without proper technique. You threw sand. You talked during combat. You dropped your weapon. You wrestled instead of fought. Everything you did violated the rules of dueling. I fight to win, Jay corrected. There is a difference. You fight like combat is art. Beautiful, perfect, impressive, something to be admired. We fight like combat is war. Ugly, desperate, whatever works, whatever keeps you alive. Your way is primitive. My way won. Jake shrugged. Look, Valerian combat is amazing. I mean it. Your technique is flawless. The way you move, the coordination, the precision. It is beautiful to watch. It really is. But it is also predictable. You follow forms, patterns, classical responses. I do not. That is my advantage. You train to fight other Valorians. I train to survive against anything. Kael'ron was quiet, processing. He did not want to accept it, did not want to believe that his 200 years of training had a fundamental flaw. But the evidence was there, bleeding, defeated, sitting in the dark. You humiliated me, Kael'ron said quietly. Made me look like a fool. The great champion, beaten by a human who does not even know proper form. I beat you, Jake said. His voice was firm but not cruel. That is not humiliation. That is learning. That is discovering something new, something you did not know before. You lost. That hurts. I get it. But losing is not the end. Losing is information, data, feedback on what you need to improve. He stood up, looked down at Kael'ron. You want revenge? Want a rematch? I will fight you again. Right now if you want. But the result will be the same, because you have not changed. You have not adapted. What is the point of a rematch? Kael'Ron asked bitterly. You will just use your dishonorable tactics again. Your tricks. Your cheating. I cannot defend against someone who has no honor, no rules, no limits. Then learn them, Jake said. Simple, direct. Teach me your forms, your techniques, all that classical Valerian knowledge. I would love to learn it. I will teach you how to fight without honor, how to adapt, how to survive, how to win when perfect technique is not enough. Kael'Ron stared at him. Why would you do that? Why would you help me? I challenge you to humiliate your people, to demonstrate Valerian superiority. I wanted to make you look weak, to prove humans are inferior. And you want to help me? Because you are wasted as just a traditional duelist, Jake said. You have incredible natural ability, incredible training, incredible skill, but you are limited by your own traditions, by your own rules. Combine your skill with human adaptability, with our improvisation, our willingness to break rules, you would be unstoppable, truly unstoppable. You want to make me better? Kael'Ron could not process it, could not understand. After I tried to humiliate you, after I laughed at your people, called you weak, challenged you to prove you inferior? Yeah. Jake grinned. That easy human smile. That is what humans do. We break things and rebuild them better. We take defeats and turn them into advantages. We lose battles and learn from them. We do not see failure as final. We see it as information, as opportunity. You are an opportunity. Interested? Kael'Ron thought about it, really thought, about 247 victories, each one teaching him that he was perfect, that he was unbeatable, that he knew everything about combat, that his way was the only way, the best way. 247 victories that had taught him nothing, because he never lost, never had to adapt, never had to question, never had to grow, and one loss, one defeat, that had shattered his world, destroyed his arrogance, shown him that there were things he did not know, could not do, had never considered. One loss that taught him more in 30 minutes than 2 centuries of victory ever had. Teach me, Kael'Ron said. Decision made. Pride swallowed. Teach me how to fight without honor. Teach me how to adapt. Teach me how to truly win. Not just against Valorians following the same rules, but against anything, anyone, any style. Jake smiled, extended his hand. Deal. Tomorrow. Dawn. We start training. Kael'Ron looked at the offered hand. Human gesture. Simple. Direct. He took it. 2 hands. One human. One Valerian. Shaking. Sealing an agreement. The undefeated champion. Defeated. But not destroyed. Not ended. Just beginning something new. Something better. Something that would make him stronger than he had ever been. Sometimes you had to lose everything to gain what mattered. Sometimes defeat was the best teacher. Sometimes the greatest victory came after the worst loss. Kael'Ron was about to learn that lesson, and change everything because of it. 6 months later, Kael'Ron stood in the arena again, the same arena where he had lost, where his undefeated streak had ended, where his old life had died. Now he was back, fighting, winning, undefeated again. Sort of. He had lost once. That would always be part of his record. But since that day, since Jake Miller had beaten him, he had not lost again. 32 duels in 6 months. 32 victories. But different now. Better. Fundamentally changed. He still used Valerian technique. Still moved with that grace and precision his people were known for. Still employed the classical forms he had spent 2 centuries perfecting. That foundation had not changed. Could not change. It was who he was. What he was. But now he combined it with human tactics, with adaptation, with improvisation, with unpredictability. He would start a duel using perfect Valerian form, lure his opponent into expecting traditional combat, then suddenly throw sand, or talk during the fight, or drop a weapon and grapple, or do something no classical duelist would ever do. He was unbeatable, not because he followed the forms perfectly, but because he knew when to break them, when to abandon tradition, when to survive instead of looking beautiful, when winning mattered more than honor. Other Valorians challenge him, constantly, the traditionalists, the conservatives, those who saw his new style as corruption, as contamination, as betrayal of their culture. They wanted to prove the old ways were superior, that pure Valorian technique was best, that learning from humans was weakness. He beat them all, every single one, used their own techniques against them, waited for them to execute perfect classical combinations, then added human chaos when they expected Valorian order. They could not adapt, could not change, could not handle unpredictability. They lost, again and again. Kael'ron became an advocate for cooperation, for cultural exchange, for learning from humans, for understanding that different did not mean inferior, that there was value in other species' methods, other philosophies, other ways of thinking. He spoke at military academies, gave demonstrations at warrior gatherings, wrote articles for combat journals, all saying the same thing. Valorian tradition was beautiful, valuable, worth preserving, but it was not complete, was not perfect, could be improved by learning from others. He trained others, started teaching young Valorians who wanted to learn his new style, his combined techniques, Valorian precision with human adaptability, classical forms with improvised chaos, creating something new, something neither species could achieve alone. Jake stood in the observation area, watching one of Kael'ron's training sessions. The former undefeated champion was in the arena below, teaching a class of 20 young Valorians, all eager, all open-minded, all willing to learn from a human's methods. Kael'ron was demonstrating a combination, classical Valorian strike flowing into human grappling, showing them when to abandon weapons, when to fight dirty, when survival mattered more than looking good. The students watched, practiced, struggled, learned. Ready? Kael'ron called up to Jake. They had a standing appointment, 3 times a week, sparring together, training together. Always, Jake called back. He headed down to the arena floor. They faced each other. Partners now, friends, not enemies, not rivals. Just 2 fighters who respected each other, pushed each other, made each other better. The sparring match began. Intense, fast, serious. Kael'ron used all 4 arms, 4 blades, perfect Valorian technique, lightning fast, impossibly precise, beautiful to watch. Jake used 1 blade, human timing, human adaptability, reading Kael'ron's movements, anticipating, countering, not with equal skill, but with equal effectiveness. They were evenly matched now, after 6 months of training together, of learning from each other, of combining their strengths. The match went 20 minutes. Hard fighting, both landing hits, both taking hits, both refusing to quit. It ended in a draw, mutual exhaustion, mutual respect, both stepping back at the same time, both smiling. No winner, no loser, just 2 friends testing themselves. They sat on the arena steps, cooling down, drinking water, breathing hard, satisfied. This was what combat should be, not about proving superiority, about growth, challenge, partnership. You destroyed me to rebuild me better, Kael'ron said. He was looking at the students practicing below, at the future he was building. 6 months ago I was arrogant, thought I was unbeatable because I had never lost, thought I knew everything about combat, about fighting, about what it meant to be a warrior. And now, Jake asked, now I know that losing taught me more than 247 victories ever did. Kael'ron looked at his former opponent, his current friend, his teacher in ways that mattered. Those victories taught me I was perfect, taught me I had nothing to learn, made me arrogant, blind, weak. But that one loss, that defeat, it shattered my arrogance, opened my eyes, showed me there was so much I did not know, so much I had never considered. So much value in other ways of thinking. He held up his 4 hands. Thank you for beating me. Thank you for showing me that perfection is a cage. That tradition without adaptation is death. That pride without humility is weakness. Thank you for learning from it. Jake said, most people would have gotten bitter, angry, resentful. You got better. That takes courage. Real courage. More than winning ever does. Below them in the arena, young Valorians trained, using combined techniques, mixing Valorian and human methods, traditional forms with chaotic improvisation, perfect execution with desperate survival instinct, creating something new, something better, something that honored both traditions while being limited by neither. Kael'ron's legacy was not 247 victories anymore. That number no longer defined him, did not matter. What mattered was the one loss, the one defeat that changed everything, that opened his eyes, that taught him humility, that showed him there was always more to learn, always room to grow, always value in listening instead of assuming. He was still the greatest duelist in the Valorian Empire, probably, but now he was more. A teacher, a bridge between species, a symbol of growth through failure, proof that defeat could be the beginning of something better instead of the end of everything. Same time next week? Jake asked, standing, stretching, already planning their next match. Every week until one of us cannot continue, Kael'ron agreed. Until we are too old, too injured, too dead. We keep training, keep learning, keep pushing each other. They would probably fight for years, decades, maybe, never keeping score, never caring who won any individual match, just pushing each other, teaching each other, learning together, building something neither could build alone. The undefeated champion had learned the most important lesson. Sometimes you need to lose everything to gain what matters. Sometimes defeat is the greatest teacher. Sometimes the worst day of your life becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. And what mattered was not winning, was not being undefeated, was not protecting pride or maintaining reputation. What mattered was growth, learning, friendship forged through combat and mutual respect, building something better than what existed before. The arena hummed with activity. Valorians training with humans, learning from each other, teaching each other, building bridges through shared combat, through mutual respect, through understanding that different was valuable, that other perspectives made you stronger, that cooperation exceeded isolation, all because one arrogant champion had been beaten by a human who fought dirty, who refused to follow the rules, who won ugly instead of losing beautifully, all because both of them chose to learn instead of holding grudges, chose growth over resentment, chose friendship over enmity. The galaxy was better for it, stronger, more connected, more willing to learn, more open to change. And it all started with one duel, one impossible victory. One champion learning that sometimes losing is exactly what you need.